Ladies and gentlemen, let us address some of the foods that can actually improve your lipid profile. Basically, your cholesterol levels, the ones that you people call HDL and LDL, okay? What can actually bring the normalcy to these lipid profiles in your system, okay? So now, we've talked about cholesterol before. We have actually talked about how important cholesterol is in your system and that you cannot avoid cholesterol. If any case, you need cholesterol for survival. And basically for somebody who has not been on this platform before and they're actually seeing this video for the first time, first, consider subscribing. And number two, we say that cholesterol is very important because a lot of biological functions rotate around this animal called cholesterol. One, your brain is full of cholesterol, so therefore you cannot function. The brain cannot function without cholesterol. Two, all your cells are covered by a lipid bilayer. That's a cell membrane. That is cholesterol. Number three, some of the hormones and some of the enzymes that regulate biological functions, they come from cholesterol, like the prostaglandins that protect your gut wall so that the acid does not destroy your gut wall, that help you get a normal menstrual cycle because of the contraction of the uterus. They're called prostaglandins. They're coming from cholesterol. Sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, they come from cholesterol. Vitamin D, which is your immune system, comes from cholesterol, all right? Cortisol, which is your stress hormone, comes from cholesterol. And, of course, aldosterone, a hormone that regulates your blood pressure, comes from cholesterol. And then, finally, cholesterol comes in to neutralize or to actually help you heal from inflammation that is caused by the inflammatory foods, the seed oils, the wheat, the sugars, the alcohol that is being caused, the inflammation being caused in the system entirely by these foods is what cholesterol comes in to clear. So if you drop cholesterol-rich foods, who do you think will fix all these problems? Question for this conversation. Now, every time you run a lipid profile test, you will see total cholesterol, which is a measure of basically the high density lipoprotein and low density lipoprotein, the LDL and HDL. I have already told you that LDL and HDL are not types of cholesterol. These are the vehicles that carry cholesterol from the liver into the system and from the system back to the liver. So the vehicle that carries cholesterol from the liver into the system is what we call the LDL. No wonder you've labeled it the bad cholesterol, because it's actually ferrying cholesterol into the system, right? So into the blood vessels, into the tissues and all that. The one that is taking it out of the tissues, out of the blood vessels, back into the liver is what you call the good cholesterol, HDL, all right? So I don't want you to base your conversation on LDL and HDL because these are just carriers, right? The firefighters are inside the fire trucks. Fire trucks are not firefighters, so do not blame the fire trucks, all right? And do not even blame the firefighters. They're coming in to help you turn off the fire. So cholesterol is fat, and for you to transport anything in blood, it must be soluble in blood. So these two vehicles, they just simply make it a little bit soluble. They actually coat it so that it looks soluble in blood and it can easily be transported in blood. That's why they are lipoproteins. Lipo for lipid, proteins, a lipid, a fat attached to a protein makes it easier to transport it in blood. Now, even if you're trying to focus your mind on the LDLs and HDL, of course, once your doctor, the syllabus has actually conditioned him to think or to actually look at it this way. The guidelines are saying if LDL is up and HDL is low and the triglycerides are up, simply indicate a statin, all right? Give a statin to lower cholesterol. But then when you lower the cholesterol, you end up having the side effects of low cholesterol levels. Brain, you start losing the memory. Nerves, you start having nerve problems. You start having issues with your system, generally the skin and all that. You start having issues with blood pressures. Start having issues with low immunity. Start having issues with erections and hormone balance. Start having inability to actually handle stress. You have problems with hypertension. And now all these are going to affect the system generally. So you cannot survive without cholesterol. Let's be honest with that conversation, okay? So when you're being told to avoid the eggs and cholesterol-rich foods, is a lie. So it has to be unlearned on this one, all right? So that test is intentional because it makes you focus on LDL. And once the LDL are very high, you start thinking, oh, I might end up getting a stroke or a heart attack because this cholesterol is going to clog my arteries and expose me to danger. However, allow me to shock you that on that test, well done, you've done it, but request to go deeper. Either they look at the HDL and the triglyceride ratio, Or they can actually go ahead and classify the LDL into these two types, because the low density lipoprotein, the carrier that carries cholesterol from the liver into the system, has two types again. One of those types is the one that actually causes problems. And the weird part is it is not even associated with carrying cholesterol. It doesn't even carry the cholesterol. So LDL is classified into two. One is the small dense LDL, small but very dense LDL. And then we have the large and then buoyant LDL. Now on these two, the small dense LDL is the problem, because this one, because of its density, it can easily penetrate the walls of the blood vessels, causing you problems, causing you inflammation and all that. But the large buoyant is safe. That's the one that doesn't even carry the cholesterol, and that's where the challenge comes in. So when somebody tells you, oh, you have high LDL, and then diagnoses you with familial hypercholesterolemia, and then they give you a statin or a fibrate or niacin to actually lower this cholesterol, they're actually messing you up, right? Because they are not even lowering the vehicles, they are lowering the one that is carried by the vehicles. They are lowering the cholesterol. And who will now fix the inflammation? And realize you can have high LDL, which is a larger percentage the small dense LDL. Now that one will expose you to problems generally because of inflammation. But if you have high LDL, but the larger percentage is now the large buoyant, there's no call for alarm, because that one is the protective one, is the safe one. So do not pay attention so much on the LDL and HDL. Go deeper, right? But the most important thing that you should take keen on that test is triglycerides, because those ones are actually coming from a different direction. You remember when we talked about fructose? These were they're actually coming in from, all right? And realize this, a lot of cholesterol is being made by the liver. So it's not coming from what you're eating. Very minimal percentage, about 15 to 20% is coming in through diets. So a lot of cholesterol that is in your system is actually coming in from the liver making it. That's why drugs stop the liver from making it. But the question comes in this way. Yes, we have told you already to stop eating cholesterol-rich foods. Why is your cholesterol still going up? Why? Because the liver is trying to compensate for you not taking in cholesterol, so the liver is making even more. And that's a problem. Now, you stopped eating those eggs, you stopped eating those saturated fats. Now you still have high cholesterol. Does it even make sense to you? And now we have to give you a drug to stop the liver from making cholesterol. So then who is going to fix our inflammation? Are we not using statins to actually create a business for the pharmaceutical companies? Because the side effects of statins will guarantee more drugs on your prescription. So be very careful, okay? So a lot of people who have actually suffered a stroke or a heart attack, you run the lipid profile. These guys have a very normal lipid profile, and they will start wondering, why then is cholesterol being demonized when there are people who actually have a heart attack and strokes with their cholesterol levels in order? You should be very careful with that, okay? So a high SDLDL, the small dense LDL, is the one that will predispose you to heart attacks, to strokes, to kidney failures, to dementia, to glycation. Remember when you do the HbA1c, where sugar is attaching itself to red blood cells? That is exactly what is actually activating that process, the small dense LDL. And of course, they will cause systemic inflammation by causing oxidative stress to the cells and to the vessels in general, producing these radicals that cause you more problems, right? And this also can be associated with the seed oils. So you should be very careful about the seed oils instead of thinking about just cholesterol and jumping into taking a statins. Some of you self-medicate yourself just because your family history has hypertension, has heart attacks, has strokes. You've taken a chance on yourself to start taking in the statins. You even started on 40 milligrams every night so that you try to prevent yourself from getting the strokes. But you did not pay attention deeply because you're still consuming the wheat, the sugars, and all the seed oils. You're still obese. So then you're just wasting time. You're actually digging your own pit as early as now, right? So statins do not reduce the LDL. They lower production of cholesterol in the liver. As you're focusing on the vehicles that carry cholesterol, statins have nothing to do with the vehicles. Statins have everything to do with the cholesterol. You see that? And that's a mess. So you should start asking these questions to your doctor. Now, there are foods that can actually increase or balance your ratios of HDL and LDL in the system. For example, foods like olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, very good one in terms of balancing these cholesterol levels in the system. But realize this, extra virgin olive oil is supposed to be used for top dressing. So it was not designed for cooking. It is monounsaturated. It has one double bond. Expose it to heat or sunlight, it can oxidize and become reactive. Can actually make the reactive oxygen species, or the species that are actually radicals that cause more inflammation. So reserve extra virgin olive oil for top dressing. Avocados are very well known to raise your HDL, right? To improve your cholesterol parameters. Fish oils, which have high content of omega-3. And remember, our target is to make sure that we have more of omega-3 than we have the omega-6 that are inflammatory. But the supplements for omega-3, look for the one that has the EPA, all right? Because I know most of these supplements have DHA. So go for the one that has EPA, because that one is the one that is actually responsible for improving the lipid profile. We have almonds and the walnuts. These are things that actually can improve your cholesterol parameters. But most importantly, as you bring in these foods, you're not just bringing in these foods and sitting there doing nothing. High intensity interval training, exercise is always here. Even though it plays a 15% of roles in healthcare, it is very important to actually do that to improve your cholesterol parameters. Fasting is coming in handy here again, right? So that you activate the liver's production and you heal the inflammation in the system, and now the parameters stabilize. Above all, fructose is your enemy because it brings in the triglycerides. So therefore, those foods, processed foods, sugar cane, table sugar, uh, honey, fruits, these things that have fructose in plenty, you should drop them because they're going to cause you more problems. So increasing HDL is very important. However, our focus should not be on the HDL and LDL. Our focus should be just basically balancing the cholesterol levels, and the body can actually do that on itself, right? And then do not stop eating those foods that are rich in cholesterol. Enjoy them because they are not the problem. The problem is consumption of the inflammatory foods, and now the liver has the role to produce more cholesterol to fix the inflammation. All right, the deficiency of vitamin D, now the liver is making more cholesterol to fix that problem. So cholesterol is a raw material for fixing problems. Don't blame it. Okay, now there are foods that can actually reduce your protective mechanisms in terms of cholesterol and now increase your risk in inflammation. Of course, high carb diet. So if you're consuming those sugars, please reduce the sugars. Eat fatty meats. Use saturated fats. Do not use the polyunsaturated fatty acids. The margarine, the seed oils, don't use those things. Don't use even the solid vegetable oils. Because I understand the food industry is very clear. It understands that saturated fats, the animal fats, are solid at room temperature. So for us to imitate that, we must pass our liquid vegetable oils into hydrogen so that it solidifies and becomes a problem. Be very, very clear in your mind on the polyunsaturated fatty acids and the hydrogenated fats and these trans fats, okay? The peanut butters, the margarines, all that. Butter is saturated, so enjoy butter. So butter, cheese, ghee, tallow, lard, all these are saturated fats that are very necessary for your consumption. So you can do that, okay? And then including cod liver oil. And then, of course, go to the gym and enjoy the gym, do the hits, lift the weights, and this has to be vigorous exercise. For you to improve your cholesterol parameters, it has to be vigorous exercises, which tells you the house workouts are supposed to be in the beginning, in the initial phase when you're still overweight and trying to balance this, when you're still not used to the gym. You start with house workouts, and then now you graduate into the gym and you can do hits during morning runs and all that. And then, of course, improved sleep. Please, the reason why we tell you to go to bed by 10:30 is because we want you to have enough sleep to actually allow your body to heal and stabilize hormones and even the cholesterol levels. Reduced stress. And the only way to reduce stress is to stay present. We've talked about this on a video that you can actually check, which is the pillars of healthcare. Okay. And then if you are somebody who takes alcohol, drop the alcohol. Alcohol brings in a lot of fat. Alcohol brings in a lot of estrogen. Alcohol is actually detrimental to your health. Alcohol impairs liver function. Alcohol impairs kidney function. So you cannot allow alcohol in your system at this moment in time, right? For you to lead a healthy life, avoid alcohol. It actually just takes money out of your pocket. It doesn't do anything beneficial to your health. And if at all you need alcohol to get stimulated, to actually have fun, you are a very boring person. If you need alcohol so that you can actually have fun, so that you can actually be excited, if you need a stimulant in alcohol to actually perform properly, you have a problem. You are a very boring person. You just don't want to agree. Smoking cigarettes is another one, highly inflammatory to the system. Please start tapering down this. Start now reducing your smoking. and do away with smoking totally. You cannot handle the consequences of cigarette smoking. And if at all you're still on the initial phases of fixing your cholesterol levels, you can use some supplements like berberine. Berberine is a very good supplement on a daily basis or a weekly basis to actually try and balance these levels of cholesterol. However, as you change the diet and involve yourself in healthy lifestyles, berberine can be a supplement, and also 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐬𝐞. Okay, these are the two supplements that are very well known to actually balance your cholesterol levels and clear inflammation in your system. However, diets, fasting, sleep, low stress levels, these are the things that are so important, including exercises, to actually bring down those parameters and stabilize them. And also remember, our role is not to actually just look at the LDL and HDL, because they're not types of cholesterol. Our role is to make sure that we have limited inflammation in the system, and the amount of cholesterol that is being made by the liver is not in excess. It comes in to just fix a little inflammation and help us produce the things that we actually said cholesterol is a raw material too. So I thought you should know that, and basically just practice and see how it happens to you. I wish you well.